Hello and welcome to Pathways, where you are invited to join me for a visit with leaders in personal development and cultural evolution. This is your host, Paul O'Brien. While millions have found the spiritual classic, A Course in Miracles, life-changing, others have been put off by its esoteric, metaphysical aspects. Our guest today wrote a book that is not a philosophical explanation of the Course, it's a practical guide for living it. The author shows readers how to get the ego out of the way, to connect with their inner teacher, and to access personal power and strength. Our guest is Maria Felipe, author of the book, Live Your Happy, Get Out of Your Own Way and Find the Love Within. After experiencing success as a model and actress, Maria felt called inward and studied to become a reverend at Pathways of Light, an accredited religious school inspired by A Course in Miracles. She leads monthly services as a New Thought minister at Unity Church in Burbank, California. Hello, Maria, and welcome to the Pathways program.
Thank you for having me. I am happy to be here.
Hey, I think you must be happy all the time after writing this book. I mean, it's really great. But before we start talking about your inspiring book, let's share with our audiences about New Thought Christianity. How would you describe it?
Well, New Thought Christianity is Christianity that's very powerful because it really brings this whole concept of that the Christ is not outside of you. It's not something that you look for, you pray outside of you. It brings you back within to recognize that the same Christ that existed in our dear brother Jesus that walked along this planet long ago is the same Christ that we all hold within. And what New Thought Christianity is really bringing us back, which is what the book talks about heavily about, is bringing it back that it's within you. So the Christ consciousness is within you. Mm-hmm. And the same powerful stuff that our dear brother Jesus did, we can do because the same Christ exists within us.
So in other words, it's like looking at Jesus as an exemplar, as a great example, rather than somebody who's going to save you and take care of all of that for you.
Yeah, and how powerful is that? Even saying that is so freeing to look at him as an example. You know, Jesus walked around pretty much with non-judgment and not being a victim of the world that he saw. He held everything in high regard and mm-hmm. was had a powerful connection with prayer with God. Mm-hmm. After he was baptized in the Jordan. And then he went off to those 40 days in the wilderness of where the eagle was taunting him. He really was like very advanced because he used all his powers. The eagle was telling him to use it for, separation, for power, for, separating nations and wars. And the Jesus was really good at tuning into the spirit, to the spirit voice and, taking down the notch of that eagle voice. And that's what this type of Christianity is about using Jesus as an example that our mind is very powerful and that we can discern and choose truth all the time.
Right. Now, this show is being broadcast for the first time on KBOO-FM on Easter Sunday. And so I want to ask you, how does New Thought Christianity think of the resurrection story?
Well, the resurrection is more of the resurrection of resurrecting the truth within your mind. Mm-hmm. So basically the crucifixion will be crucifying the thoughts of fear, crucifying the thoughts of form, even crucifying the thought that you're a body, and then your spirit, and then resurrecting to truth that you're not a body and that you lack nothing and have it all right now.
Mm-hmm. Okay. And in the book, you use the word God, and in New Thought, they use the word God. Some people, might have an issue with that. Well, what does the term mean? What is God, the way you use it?
Well, the way I use God is based on the principles of the Course, obviously, because the book is heavily based on the Course. But basically, God is source. It's where we are connected to and where we've truly never left. We just think that we have. The Course would call it, there was a moment where the Son of God forgot to laugh. That's how it says it. There's a moment in time where the Son of God forgot to laugh. and boom, here we are.
Ah,
Thinking we could do it better than God, right?
right.
So what God is for us is really, for me, it's a space of consciousness of where I really reside and where my home truly is, and it has nothing to do with form. It's a space of where everything is whole, everything's complete. There's no separation, there's no duality, there's no this is right, this is wrong. It's a space in consciousness where we truly come from and think that we've left, the Course would say, but that's not true. It's an illusion. So here we are living this nightmare.
And so, okay, we this is this so well explained in your book, and what motivated you to write this book, Live Your Happy?
Well, it's a funny story. I really never consider myself becoming a writer or being an author just because I suffer from dyslexia. I've never considered myself an intellectual. I've considered myself more of a street smart type of gal.
Mm-hmm.
So I said, no way, I could never write a book. So I created an inspirational CD based on my best talks just to like keep people quiet and give them something after I would speak in my speaking engagements.
Right.
But one summer day, and I think it was in August of 2015, I was drinking some Pinot Noir, some wine, and I put a post on Facebook of something I thought could be in a book, and I put excerpt from my book. And I didn't have a book, Paolo. I didn't have one. I just put that because it sounded good.
Uh-huh.
And then the next morning, D. Patrick Miller from Fearless Books, and he's the one that originally published The Disappearance of the Universe, reached out to me on Facebook and asking me about my book, that he gets very interested in course teachers that have a book.
Right.
And he wanted to talk to me about it. And Paolo, I was like, what is he talking about? And I looked at the post and I said, oh my God, Maria, this is what wine does. It gets you into trouble.
That's great. Okay, so
that's what happened, really.
Okay, so now this book, like you said, it leverages heavily on A Course in Miracles. Tell us about A Course in Miracles and how you discovered it and how it's changed your life.
Well, the Course in Miracles is basically helps you to listen to your internal teacher, which the book calls Holy Spirit. You can call it your inner friend, your best friend, intuition, truth, the truth voice within your mind. Mm-hmm. So the Course really helps you to relinquish and let go of the barriers you've placed in front of love and be able to really listen, just like Jesus did, listen to the voice of love constantly, consistently. I learned about the Course in 1995, where I was at actually a Unity church in Miami. Mm-hmm. And they said that they had a course group going on there. Actually, in 2001. In 1995, I found Marianne Williamson's book, A Return to Love. Right. And she kept on talking about this blue book. And I was wondering, what is this American Jewish woman talking about? This right. blue book, like, what is this? Mm-hmm. So I got intrigued by it. And when I went to Unity Church 5 years later, I heard that they were doing a workshop on that same book that lady was talking about, A Return to Love. Right. So I went into the workshop, Paolo, and one of the first things this man says is, you're not a victim of the world that you see. You're responsible for your experiences, and you forgive people for what they didn't do. Mm-hmm. Right. And I was like, what is that? Uh-huh. and I didn't understand anything. But even though I didn't understand, I knew it would be my path. And I would continue to be a student of the Course for 15 years after that, and struggling with it, actually. Mm-hmm. And not living my happy.
Okay, so now I want to ask you about what the struggle was. But first, what is a miracle according to A Course in Miracles?
A miracle is a change of perception from fear to love. Mm-hmm. So it's the experience of changing the way you see a situation. So the moment of which you're able to let go of the grievance, or let go of you think that person, what that person did to you, the moment you're able to shift that, it's either a love or a call for love coming from outside, you are able to switch your thoughts about the experience, and that's the miracle, the way that you're experiencing it.
And why was all of that a struggle for you?
Well, because I was not consistent. You know, my book is very heavy with being consistent with I am love versus, I am love and going to, the course groups once a week and feeling good for a hot second because I'm reading these concepts, but then going into the world and looking for my love outside of myself, or saying I'm abundance and then worried about money, or it's like we're not really living it. It's like there's just these beautiful intellectual concepts in our minds when we read self-help books or go to workshops or whatever it is that we do. They're really nice and all, and we could do all the exercises and everything, but if we're not incorporating it at a 10 in our lives, in our relationship with ourselves and others, it's not going to work. So that's what I was doing for 15 years. I was basically, in this, self-help junkie, or spiritual movement type of stuff that I loved, even being a course student. But my life wasn't working because kept on looking for my source of happiness and love outside of me, of where it
Hmm.
never could be found. So I wasn't practicing the principles at a 10.
Okay, so if you're not going to look for love outside of yourself, and of course this is a very common thing that we humans do, we want to be loved, we have this longing for love, what's the solution? The same thing with abundance, If abundance, you typically think that's me getting what I want, and what I want is something outside of myself. So how do we switch that?
Abundance is recognizing you are as God created you, period. Right? So abundance has nothing to do with money, has nothing to do with, accolades or collecting trophies or having a new suit or car. Abundance based on the course is recognizing that you are as God created you, period. And it's not that you're not going to get that suit, and it's not that you're not going to get that accolade. It's just that you're going to understand that your source is not outside of you. And whether you have that accolade or that suit or not, you're going to be happy because your source is not outside of you. How I've been able to cultivate this is by turning away my attention from looking for something outside of me to complete me or to make me whole, and cultivate this whole experience of that I'm complete. And the only love I'm really looking for in the world that I think I need is really, I'm looking for the love of God and to remember I've never left my source. That's really what I'm really, 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 really yearning for.
Hmm.
Not so much, it appears that I'm yearning it from, let's say, you or somebody else outside of me. It looks like it, but it's not really you or anybody else I'm looking for my love in. It's really, I really want the love of God, and I think I'm going to find it outside of myself because I think I've lost it.
Right. That's a quote from your book says, when I was in my 20s, I longed to be loved, loved by everyone, loved by the whole world. What I didn't know was that I was really searching for the love of God, and that I already had that love within me. I couldn't bring happiness into my experience because I was in a trance, living like a puppet run by my own ego. Such a beautiful quote, and that's exactly what you're talking about. But
Mm.
you look at this book, and the title of the book, "Live Your Happy." Are you implying that we should be happy all the time? Is that possible?
Yeah, yeah, it is actually. Yep, I am implying that, and yes.
Wow.
It's so funny you mentioned that because I'm actually going to, somebody asked me that question in a questionnaire recently for the press.
Right.
And the answer was just right on of what you're saying. Um, the question was, are you saying that we should be happy all the time? Aren't all feelings important? And I said, well, I wouldn't say should, but rather it would be helpful. And in my experience, it is truly possible. We've just taught ourselves that we can't be happy all the time. That is another purpose of this book, to help people undo the thought that we need to suffer and believe in our problems. Certainly, feeling your feelings is vital. There's a whole section in the book about it. I'm not saying anyone should brush anything under the rug or pretend to be happy.
Right.
The key is to know all your feelings, observe them with your inner wisdom, which I call the Holy Spirit, and give them over, asking for change when that's useful. Then there will be a change of perception, and that will bring you back to living happy.
Now, you say that we have to become ready to be happy. How do we do that?
Yep, we do need to become ready to be happy because it takes something. It takes something, and that's what I call in the book big willingness.
And step one is reading this book.
Yeah, it is helpful. It is helpful to read the book because it helps to awaken consciousness. Really, it kind of goes into that part of your mind that is truth and helps it kind of like open the door a little bit, the key there, if you're willing, right? But yeah, it basically what was it the question real quick before that because I lost myself. You said something there.
Well, it was about how do we become ready to be happy.
To be happy, yeah. Um, in my experience, I needed to have big willingness, which is to say, you know what? I'm tired of this baggage. I'm tired of suffering. My old ways are not working anymore. Looking for my happiness outside, trying to manipulate, trying to make things happen in the world. This is exhausting. Like, I'm tired. Like, how about the opposite of this? How about that? Like, can I have the opposite of this fear and this judgment and this horrific sense of self? Is that possible? So when I started to ask myself these questions, I started to go to ministerial school in 2009 and kind of having an undoing in my mind of the fear that was within it. How I was able to begin to live happy is by starting to get less and less tranced out by the world of form and not make things matter anymore.
Mm-hmm.
Not make them a big deal anymore. That's what I call in the book, The Big Deals of the World.
Right. Yeah. You know, and the subtitle of your book is Get Out of Your Own Way and Find the Love Within. And the way that we get in our way, and the author of all of these so-called big deals is the ego, right?
Yes. So get out of your own way is basically, yeah, get out of your own way, get those thoughts out of the way, get those barriers out of the way, get that little small self out of the way, and step into your true self with a capital S, which is your true self that's connected to your source, which is God, love, light, whatever, universe, whatever word resonates with you. Whatever serves the purpose, I always say. Use whatever word serves the purpose. As long as you're happy, we're fine. Use whatever you want, you know? You can use you can use whatever you want.
Okay, so but is the ego bad? I mean, does it have some job to do, and it's just we've given it too much authority?
Yeah, the ego has a huge job, and that job is to kill your happy.
To kill your happy. Okay, well. And how can we avoid falling into the ego's traps?
Well, the ego's tricks. I said, in my book, I have the ego tricks. How to get, how to not get tricked by the ego's foolishness, right? And one of the ego's tricks is, first of all, is the shoulds. You get out of the ego voice by, well, first of all, inherently, since we're in a body, Paulo, since we're in a body and it appears that we're separate, we have an ego. We all have an ego. We all have a voice of fear in this duality form that we live in. So we just need to be aware that we have two thought systems in our mind, fear and love, which is ego and Holy Spirit. And depending which one you're choosing, you can experience heaven or hell here on earth. So the ego tricks are the shoulds. I should have, I could have, I wish I would have done it better,
Right.
In the past or in the future.
Right.
The ego trick also is obsession with the past. It obsesses of, like, maybe you wish, you hadn't said that to that person because maybe you would have stayed in that relationship if you pretended you didn't care so much.
Right.
Or maybe if I would have not said that to my boss, I would have got a raise. And you just keep on rehashing that story over and over again that keeps you in the past and crucified, really. Now that we're talking about Easter, right? Having that crucifixion, crucifying yourself with your thoughts is another ego trick. The third ego trick is focus on the body. So the ego likes to focus on that your body, that you're separate, that you need to take care of your body, that, all that stuff. Mm-hmm. And then the fourth ego trick is the best one of all, which is what the ego uses the most to manipulate you, which is your happiness is out there. So your ego is always going to tell you your happiness is in the car, your happiness is in your romantic relationship, your happiness is if you get married, your happiness is if you have a kid, if you go to college, if you get a degree. All of that is going to bring you your happiness, and it's a bunch of bull. It's a bunch of BS. It's not the truth. Mm-hmm. Right? I mean, if it was true, then why are people here in Hollywood? I'm here in Hollywood, and they have it all. They have accolades, and they have their car, and they have their house, and then they're committing suicide and killing themselves.
Right.
So I don't know. It doesn't seem right to me.
Well, you say in the book very clearly that our problems are not really out there in the world, but they're in our own minds. And this is what you're talking about. It's not taking direction from the ego, but instead taking it from the higher self. But we have these habits, we have these habitual thinking habits that are not necessarily that easy to get over. So what's your approach to that?
Well, that's a very good point, because the book talks about, and the Course talks about, that the ego speaks first and speaks the loudest.
Right.
Not only that, the ego's vicious and very manipulative.
Mm-hmm.
So since it speaks first and speaks the loudest, one of the reasons I say that we get caught up in the ego tricks is because we don't know that it's not us. That's first of all. We think we are an ego. We think we are a body, right? And so it's very deceiving. So how you start to lower the volume on the ego is when you start to recognize that what you've been thinking for so long of what you think you are, and when you start to realize that you've been living in really a hellish experience, you start to say, wow, this is no longer working for me. This thought system is no longer working for me. And sometimes you have to get so devastated. That's why, haven't you heard of people that have these epiphanies when they're completely devastated in their bathrooms, crying on the floor?
Right.
And they decide that they want to have an awakening. It's that moment when you say, there must be another way. Mm-hmm. There must be another way. That you just make the commitment, since it is hard and it's so undisciplined. The Course says our minds are very undisciplined. We have no discipline. It's like a cuckoo voice, it's out mm-hmm. of control.
Mm-hmm.
You start to just cultivate understanding that this voice is no longer serving you, and begin to come back to your voice of truth, which is spirit. Now, in my book, I really get into how to listen to Holy Spirit. I get into, the spirit is very gentle. It's very loving. It doesn't manipulate. It doesn't force. It trusts infinitely.
Mm-hmm.
Like I live a life of trust. Like I don't try to make anything happen. I don't try to manipulate anything to happen. Now, I do have aspirations and I do have inspiration. Like I'm going on a book tour now in May for 2 months. And I'm not hooked on like, oh my God, I have to go to this city and I have to go to that city. I'm kind of being shown of the cities I'll go to share my work, but I'm not manipulating it so it has to look a certain way.
Right.
See, just the difference there.
I like the way the book is so empowering in pointing out that we always have a choice. We can choose to see things through the eyes of love or through the eyes of fear. And that is such a empowering reminder that we have that power, we have that freedom to change our mind, to change the way that we're thinking. And I like the way that you say everyone has the voice of God within. This voice goes by many names: inner wisdom, inner guide, the light within, your true self, your right mind. But why did you choose to use religious terminology in your book?
It just came out that way. I mean, I didn't really think about it much
mm-hmm.
when I was writing it. It just, that's what rang true for me in my heart and my experiences. My book is, as you can see, it's very heavy on experience.
Right.
It's not so blah, blah, blah. I'm talking out of my, just
right.
more like, it's very straightforward from the heart. And I guess that I use that terminology because that's the terminology that most I kind of am connected to.
Right.
And I'm not here to people please. The Course is all about people pleasing is not being loving. Mm-hmm. So I'm not here to stand up to be what people want me to be or say it the way that it feels more comfortable for them.
Right.
Because then I'm playing it small for them and for myself.
Right. Okay.
So you could choose, if you want to use another word.
Mm-hmm.
But I'm not going to compromise how I feel about something for somebody to like me or buy my book, because that doesn't really matter for me.
Right. It's not that important, really. So I like the way in the book that you talk about the way that the Holy Spirit sometimes works in mysterious ways, and to stay attuned to signs and signals, which sounds like what you're doing with regard to this book tour to some extent. Talk about signs and symbols and synchronicities.
Well, when you really give everything over, and I mean not give it over a little bit, I mean really give it over, like such as spirit, I really feel like I'm in purpose in this. Like I want to travel, like I surrender to you this travel excursion, or I really want to be in relationship with this person, but I have no idea how to be in relationship with this person. I'm scared to death. I
Mm-hmm.
give it to you, Holy Spirit, and just show me the way. Like I don't know what to do, I don't know what to say, I don't know anything. Basically, the mantra is I don't know what anything means, I
Right.
don't know. And then allowed to be shown. And what happens is that the right and perfect person will come into your life and like say something, or you'll see something like in the computer that is helpful and in alignment to whatever it is you're gonna do, and you're totally supported. Listen, when you're living in purpose and when you're living a life of trust, Paulo, you are completely supported. I know because I live it. You're completely supported by the universe on
Mm-hmm.
whatever that is.
Right.
And I
Now,
know because I live it.
yeah, no, I know too. It's like I wrote a book about synchronicities. I've written a couple books about it, and I couldn't agree with you more that we get guidance in the most indirect way sometimes, but only if we're open to it. And I also want to say you talk about relationship a lot in the book, and you define you explain how the Course in Miracles talks about special relationship and how we all want to be special. This is like the ultimate bedrock addiction is the desire to be somebody special. And in Buddhism, they say that's the reason that you're reborn, because that's the last one to go. We don't really have time to talk about it, but I just want to encourage people to read your book because it's got so much wisdom in there about relationships and how you were looking for it outside of yourself and how you finally came to realize, as one of the chapters is titled, "You are the love of your life." What do you most hope that readers will take away from your book, Live Your Happy?
Well, what's coming up for me right now, as I just go within a second, is that to really understand, and not even at an intellectual level, but more in the experiential level of truth within your experience, whatever that means for you, is that voice that you've been listening to for what appears to be eons and eons of time, that is the voice of limitation and fear and doubt and looking for everything outside of you,
Mm-hmm.
to just maybe give yourself the opportunity to understand that that is not true,
Right.
and start to really get that there is the voice of love and Holy Spirit that is so much more powerful,
Mm-hmm.
and it will always direct you back within and guide you so you understand that your happiness comes from within you and that you have it all and lack nothing in truth.
That's a beautiful way to end the program because we have run out of time. And I want to make sure to tell our listeners about your website, which is www.mariafelipe.org. mariafelipe.org. And for those who tuned in late, this is your Pathways host, Paul O'Brien, author of Great Decisions, Perfect Timing, a book that shares the theme of Pathways, which is personal and cultural evolution. In a second, I'll tell you how you can rewind and replay this interview anytime you like via the internet or as a free podcast. Just search for Pathways or Paul O'Brien and you will find it. Today we have been visiting with Maria Felipe, author of the book Live Your Happy, Get Out of Your Own Way and Find the Love Within. A perfect topic for a Pathways show, first broadcast on Easter Sunday. And I want to say thank you to all of our listeners for tuning in to Pathways, which is broadcast and streamed worldwide via KBOO.FM on Sunday mornings at 8:30 a.m. USA Pacific Time. And Maria, I want to thank you so much for being on the show. You were a brilliant guest and it was a lot of fun.
Thank you so much. Your questions were very helpful.
Now, podcasts of today's show, which listeners can tune into and forward to others, are available for free at divination.com. That's spelled D-I-V-I nation.com, as well as via iTunes and other free podcast servers. This is Paul O'Brien reminding you to tell your friends about Pathways Radio and podcasts. And thanks again to Maria Felipe and to all of you listeners for tuning in and being a part of the Pathways experience.